Welcome, everybody. This is AMA Shining Shareable Moments. I about said Marable Showments. So, like I was saying earlier, I did a little bit of research about behind the psychology for creating shareable moments, why people share. And so I want to share those details with you today. But also, in the spirit of AMA, definitely ask questions. And I'm going to ask some questions of you guys as we go to keep the chat rolling as well. So, this will be more of a collaborative effort between both of us. Hopefully we all take something away from today at least. So what we'll cover today. Why? So the psychology behind sharing, the how to engineer shareable moments, the mastering of the creator's toolkit. So talking about the tools that you have to encourage sharing in your worlds, and then a little bit about how to build long-term momentum for your worlds. So, but before we go any further, I want to start with the first question to you guys. And if we're to think about the last time, actually, wrong question. So, what's the single biggest challenge you face right now in getting players to discover your world or stay longer than a few minutes? You want to let me know what you guys have ran into or the challenges that you've had to navigate or having trouble navigating in your worlds for discovery and retention, basically.
I mean, for discovery, I've definitely had a challenge on strategies for discovery. We all know the issues with the menu and search and things like that. So trying to find ways to do that. As far as retention, I mean, in the two types of spaces, in social spaces, I have found problems with retention unless you hit that, critical mass of players in. So people want to stay in the social space. In games, it's just trying to get that quick engagement and, get people buy in to want to play more. So those have been my big
No,
roadblocks.
those are very good points. Thank you for that. In chat, we've also got from a Morgul, no sources of traffic on mobile. I think everyone kind of feels that. Utterly Otter, my worlds tend to be one and done type. I've definitely been there. I feel that as well. Discovery is harder. Yep. The Real Mad Cat, how to, let's see, have to promote world off horizon, otherwise no one finds it. The listings only show the most visited games in the main window. I mean, all of these are very true. So as a follow-up question, when you personally visit a world, what's something that makes you want to come back later? Are there any key factors that you've found or seen that keep you in a world? Critical mass, as Josh mentioned, is like an easy one, right? But we've got to get ourselves to that point first. If your friends are there, that's a good one. Stormy says definitely need a sense of more to explore or unlock. Yep, I would agree with that. Unlocking permanent things. If there's an update, I like seeing what the updates are. I like these. Thank you guys. Good answers. Okay. Real Mad Cat says if there are achievements, great visuals, and if there's more than me there, for sure. Kit Lane says I'm not a game joiner. My first impression has to be visually engaging. Okay, solving quest. Well, let's dive into some of the things that I've discovered in my research in preparing for this. So start by saying, sharing is more than caring. It's in the world of the multiverse or the metaverse, it is literally survival. So in the metaverse, attention is everything. Your audience is an invaluable marketing resource that should not be overlooked. We know that visibility on the platform can be difficult to come by, but it can be earned by building for key metrics like appeal and replayability for your worlds. So by architecting shareable moments, we can formulate a blueprint for making a virality engine and facilitate long-term attention in our world. So in my research, there was several key points that came up for why people share. And we're going to go over those real quick. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So we know some of the key factors that drive our world's traffic, especially when it comes to things like the Horizon feed or the in-app menus. And that those really come down to appeal, visit quality, repeat visitors or your retention, and Actually, whether you know it or not, technical performance matters as well. I don't know if you've seen, but in your insight metrics, they give you metrics related to crash rating, stuff like how consistent is that over time. And so these things are taken into account, maybe fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. Because ultimately, Meta wants the users to have a good time. And if your world, it isn't performing well, obviously they're not going to have a good time. Meta's not going to promote it. You have if I guess if you're the one doing the technical work on the world, you're the one doing the programming. I mean, you've got control over that, right? But what about like the appeal, the visit quality, and the repeat visitors, right? How do we encourage those three? And so I came up with sort of 5 pillars for share-worthy content. And so let's go over them one at a time and let's talk about them. So the first one is going to be social currency, the drive for status. So the idea is players will share content that makes them look good, knowledgeable, or exclusive. So an example would be like a trophy moment highlighting a triumphant victory over a boss. Can anybody else think of some moments that would be used to like it's basically moments that people would share that it's what I'm looking for. It indicates their social status. Whether it makes them look good, makes them look smart, or makes them feel like they're a part of something exclusive. King of Miami says new level unlocks, accessing the latest level or a hard to reach level. First place on a leaderboard is a big one. That's probably one of the biggest ones that we've had access to for a while. Being that first place, it's a real driver for a lot of people. Getting a new high score, beating an old score that you potentially had been working at, especially if it's one that you put a lot of effort into, that's more likely to be shared as opposed to, easily beating a high score. Climbing to a tall, hard to reach place, putting in some effort, right? I brag about my Duolingo streak every day. Maybe finding a glitch or a bug in a game. Yeah. Discovering rare, hard to find items. All these are really good. Discovering Easter eggs or secrets. I mean, yeah, you guys are right on point. Those are all great, like shareable moments, right? And so when we're creating, of course, we want to be thinking about these things. And, it may not be enough to just award a player with a thing, like just by giving them a pop-up and giving them the item. Sometimes we need to celebrate the moment in a certain way. And it's the celebration of the discovery or the accomplishment or the new high score that really supercharges that potential for sharing this moment. I don't want to step on my own toes too much. I'm going to move on, but really good points. So the next pillar is emotional resonance. So the power of feeling, the power of emotion, right? So the idea is high impact emotions are more likely to be shared than low impact emotions. So like moments of awe, moments of excitement or anger versus just moments of melancholy or contentment or pondering. Typically, when you're feeling melancholy or contentment or pondering, you're not thinking about, let me share this moment on social media to all my friends. It's usually when you're hit with an awe factor or you're really excited about something that you just accomplished, or maybe you're really mad about it for whatever reason. I don't know. Tell me if you guys have any. I mean, I can think of moments of awe and moments of excitement. You guys have already shared some in chat, and as long as we're celebrating those moments and we're not just giving them to the player in a generic way, they're more apt to share them. But I am curious, could we effectively use anger to share moments in our worlds? And if so, how might that look? Anyone have any feedback on that? I actually don't. That's why I was wanting to poll you guys to see if there were any. I'm thinking everyone else is wondering too. Oh, here comes some chat. Let's see. All y'all guys. So Being so close but not meeting the mark. Okay, Stormy says making so-like games. I hear a lot about so-like games, but I've not played them myself. I'm taking it that they're, from what I gather, they're just really difficult to accomplish. So it's a lot of frustration, 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 and then finally a breakthrough, right? Loss can be devastating. Yeah. Rage baiting is a big thing these days, coaxing people to get super angry. See a lot of that in social media, don't we? A common tactic on social media, yep, Goose reiterated, doing something actively wrong so people engage to tell you that you messed up. I'm not going to suggest this. So the real mad cat, when you fall off at the last moment, so near yet so far, frustrating, falling from the top of the level to the bottom. Sometimes I think you guys make a good point there. Sometimes putting in a lot of effort into a thing just to fail at the last moment and lose so much can be seen as an accomplishment. I mean, like you had so much to lose in the first place, but then the loss is so great, it's comical. Maybe it's worth sharing, right? Use that with as you will. I don't know about frustrating players too often in your game, right? So be very careful. High skill floor game, rewarding, but lots of frustration along the way, evoking fear, then joy, extremes of emotion like a roller coaster. Yeah, I think we touch on that at some point. If I'm focused on a game, it's not really frustrating me. I'm not stopping to make content or share it. I'm leaving. Yeah, comedic and meme-worthy moments. That's a good point. One that I'm going to get to here. But those are all good points. And thank you for sharing those. So the example I've listed here is, rewarding and inspiring vista after a challenging journey through a dark, narrow space. So we'll take awe in this example. You can make really scenic views in your world, and that's great. But if you're just presenting them to the player without any real effort for getting to that vista, it doesn't mean as much, and they're less likely to share that. But if you can put them through some trials and tribulations, if you can make them navigate a dark tunnel, maybe they're uncertain about the outcome, and then when the outcome becomes this vast, open, beautiful scenic space, that's going to encourage sharing. That's a moment of awe, as opposed to, like I said, just presenting a cliff. Hey, there's a cliff over here. Go stand and look over it, and it looks cool. Doesn't invoke as much emotion. You do want to try and use that emotional roller coaster before a great moment of send them through something that's worthy of the moment when it comes, right? So identity projection is the next pillar, the signal of self. Players will share content that is aligned with their interest, identity, or skill set. For example, a photo shoot opportunity in a clothing store with attractive and unique offerings that allow for self-expression. So if in our worlds, if we can create ways for players to essentially self-express, maybe it's something they were able to create. Maybe they brought several things together. Maybe they combined several attachables from your world to create a unique look for themselves that they can identify with. I think those are that's another good way to get people to share images from your world. You guys have any other potential ways to like exploit the signal of self pillar? I would say, robust customization, as much as we can in Horizon, offer deep avatar customizations. If, we have the potential for players to have a decorated personal space, it's doable, or tools to design a unique in-game item. You may have to think a little outside the box to achieve something like that. I think you could do it. The ability for players to showcase their skill, so it's tied with their identity, of mastery and competence. And a lot of times, people want to share that to say, hey, I'm good at this thing. Real Mad Cat says choice of wearables to get into character on entry to world, weapons. Yeah. I think in the case of spin the bottle, I know that there are so many different types of weapons in there, and some of them may be from your favorite shows or something. And so when they get access to that gun, maybe they had to work towards it, maybe they had to buy it. They might want to take a picture with it, right? Wearables, you can create attachables like I had mentioned, but also, for partners and hopefully in the future, maybe I shouldn't say that. Audio Guy says specific trivia, music genre. So being able to show a high score on after a trivia, they can showcase their intelligence, based on a certain topic, right? So that would be a good idea. Let's see. Affiliation. Humans are social creatures who seek to belong to groups. Creators can tap into this by building strong visual themes, factions, or team-based activities within their world. A player might share photos of their avatar wearing team colors or a group photo of their team after a successful win. So, just something else to think about as well. Utterly Otter says, give players different pathways to play. In Jigsaw, some people solve it without the edges first. Interesting. I don't know who those people are, but they aren't me. But that's a challenge, right? They want to challenge themselves. So they want, and that's a very good point. So it's a different approach to achieving the same, well, to accomplishing the challenge, I should say. I have a ton of people share pictures of themselves in front of the leaderboard, showing them on top. That's very true. Leaderboards, that, like we mentioned earlier, that first place on a leaderboard is a very coveted spot in Horizon. So practical value, the gift of helpfulness, the next pillar. Idea is players are likely to share content that provides value or help to others. An example would be designing a challenging puzzle where solvers are motivated to share tips, tricks, and solutions for those in need. I probably fall under this category as a mentor. I enjoy helping people. Is it altruism? Is that the name? Is that the name for the word or the word for the name? Whatever. But if you were to, some of the things they might share is like a photo of a completed puzzle showing the solution, a video demonstrating a technique to defeat a tricky enemy, screenshot of a map revealing a secret location or hidden collectible, or maybe it's even just a post explaining newly discovered game mechanics. So one thing you might do in your world is put things in it for people to discover. Maybe it is a mechanic. Maybe it's a boss fight, and there's a straightforward way to defeating the boss, but maybe there's also a side path or two for accomplishing the same goal. And so that one's not immediately present. So when a player discovers it and they feel like no one else has seen or found this, they're more apt to share at that point, right? Again, that goes back to the identity projection. They want to be known as the person that was the first to find this thing. But then also, under the practical values pillar, they may just want to be helpful to their community and share. Does anyone else have any ideas for promoting practical value, encouraging players to share helpful content or valuable content, or things that they've discovered in your worlds? Anyone have any ideas for how we might, as Horizon creators, how we might encourage that kind of behavior? I'm having a really fun time reading your all's comments to these questions, by the way. You guys are just as insightful. I'll give everyone a moment while I read forward here. That's okay. If we don't have any more ideas, I may have put them all out there. I don't know. You like watching others gameplay through a level. You're not the only one, considering platforms like Twitch at one point was probably like top 5 visited websites on the entire internet. So if your content is challenging, that's probably a good way to encourage people to share a playthrough of it, right? Let's go ahead and move on. So the next and last pillar that I have listed here is social connection or shared experiences, right? Players will share content that is personal, memorable, and shared amongst friends. Some of you guys already touched on this already, right? Playing with friends says a lot. So a ruckus roleplay romp with prompts, roles, and just enough structure to guide the players through the experience but leave plenty of room for them to make their own fun and memorable experiences with the world you've made. So maybe we don't, and maybe in our worlds we don't make them so structured to where the players, like we're always telling the player what to do at all times. Maybe we leave it open-ended and let the players create the content. And in that organic creation, a lot of times there will be emergent behaviors that occur, and they're funny, they're silly, they're exciting, or they're just fun. And when that happens, that's another one of those shareable moments. They're more likely to share that kind of stuff, right? As opposed to doing exactly what they're been told to do, exactly the same thing everyone else is doing, right? Real Mad Cat says a mix of both player generated content and structured content would work well. I agree. I mean, to each their own, and I encourage everyone to go out and explore and experiment with what works and what doesn't for you and your community, of course. But if I was to start a world today, I would definitely be creating with this in mind. I want, I definitely want some framework. You can't be just so open-ended that nothing makes sense. But at the same time, I don't want to take it too far, and I don't want to make sure everything that they do in the world is structured, and I'm dictating every step and movement they make. That leaves no room for creativity. I mean, if players, and that might work for you in your world, depending on what the experience is, but something to think about and something to definitely play with in your worlds, right? So now I believe we're going to move on to more of the how to kind of do this. So translating the psychology into practice or exploiting the psychology of sharing is another way to put it, right? So turning progression into proclamation. Proclamation. For some reason, I feel like I'm pronouncing that wrong. Anyway, the most shareable moments aren't just witnessed, they're earned. And I think I already touched on this a little bit, but a shareable moment, a shareable reward moment with a custom avatar celebration animation, custom spectacle of unlocking a rare item is much more compelling than just sharing a pop-up that says, congrats, you did it. And so I already touched on that a little bit, but it is real important that we do celebrate these moments, whether it's a player leveling up or a player discovering a new thing, or even a player achieving a high score, which now I'm just thinking to myself at the moment, with today's patch notes announcing world variables, it's like the highest score in the world could be a world variable. And so each time a player achieves a score, we could check against that world variable and see if it is the top high score and set off a massive celebration. Something completely new that we have access to now to do, right? Let's continue on. Using mechanics to invoke emotion, creating awe-inspiring views to reward exploration versus boom, you're just there now. I touched on this a little bit earlier. I mentioned I was trying not to step on myself. Looks like I may have done it just a little bit. Also, creating challenges or challenging experiences to engage players' attention and strengthen the emotional payoff of a mission complete. Again, we touched on this a little bit earlier as well. Putting them through some trials and tribulations before the big moment, right? That roller coaster of emotion. Creating humorous moments through physics-based mechanics, silly social situation, and outlandish environments. Anyone have any comments on or any suggestions as far as how one might create silly humorous physics-based mechanics or silly social situations, or what an idea of an outlandish environment might be? And I'll start. In one of my worlds, when a player dies, they actually, the avatar disappears, but there's a skeleton left in place of them, and then the skeleton just kind of crumples to the ground. And it's really actually quite funny. Now, it happens often, and there's no real lead up or emotional sort of roller coaster to that, but that's my idea of like a physics-based mechanic that might be a humorous moment worth sharing. Falling in a world classic. Yeah, yeah, I don't know that we want to do those on purpose. Those are usually accidents, but they do typically end up being quite comical. Escaping, along the same lines is like escaping a world. A lot of players, you don't want players to escape your world, but sometimes they still manage to figure out how. And if you notice, pictures will start to pop up when that happens. And that would be a good example of that whole exclusive social status thing that encourages people to share, right? Kit Lane says forcible attachable or forced attachable, something very comical. You could definitely use forced attachables to create some comedy. Audio Guy says making the avatar tiny and run through a maze to return to normal size while everyone watches. The whole avatar scaling thing can be entirely comical, right? That seems like a fun way to induce that emotion. Real Madcap says following through the vortex and gaining angel wing attachables. So talking more about like kind of like falling through an unsure moment and then coming out magnificent on the other side kind of thing. An emotional roller coaster for sure. Good job, guys. So the last point here would be empowering player expression. Funny death sequence. I would say escaping is a form of rage bait. Is showing the creator, haha, I got out. Yeah, I'm just thinking back now. So the idea behind empowering player expressions is customizations allow players to develop deeper connections to content and fuels the look what I got instinct. So an example here is like customizable spaces in your world for each player where they can unlock slash buy items to personalize their environment. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't see a lot of this in Horizon. And I may be entirely wrong because I don't get around a lot, to be honest with you. There's a lot of this sort of thing going on other platforms, I've noticed. Maybe your kids is playing a really popular game on another platform with this exact mechanic in mind. I know mine are. But I think we can accomplish it in Horizon as well. Don't you guys? It's hard to get in scripting at all, Daniel says. Mike the Guru, it takes a lot of work to make it happen. Best example I've seen of it is Neon Oasis by Habiter. Yeah, that's a good point. I think as creators, if we can think about this more and come up with unique ways where players can customize either their own personal look, which is a little easier to do, I think, but their own personal space or environment is a step further, right? Yeet yourself. I played that briefly the other day. I got frustrated because I didn't know how to go past 99 meters, but it sounds like you've incorporated some of that. And Morgan, do you mind coming on and maybe talking about it for a little bit? Goose says
Hey.
it also. Go ahead, Morgan.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was going to say, I think customization was a really big part of Eat Yourself. And so the ability to customize kind of your entire craft with like, I don't know, I don't know, maybe 15 to 20 different craft parts and 5 different part types. That was like a really big thing that we wanted in there. So being able to kind of wear your craft both as you were flying through the air and then when you run into the lobby and kind of like showing off to your friends is part of the fun. And so that deep kind of customization keeps people like trying out new combinations and also hopefully continuing to launch themselves over and over and over again to earn coins, to earn scrap, to buy more of those customizations. And to your point, that the way you can get farther is just by upgrading your flight or upgrading your launcher and other mechanical parts. So it all kind of feeds into the game experience where by continuing to play, you both get to fly further, meaning you get to collect more resources, meaning you get to customize more, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I like that. And that's probably my fault. I probably didn't pay enough attention to my surroundings. I ran straight to the yeeter twice without looking around. But yeah, then those are good points as well. Thank you, Morgan.
Yeah. Well, and well, in terms of your surroundings, the more you upgrade, your slingshot actually changes as well, like from a wooden one to like an industrial one to a futuristic one. So there's a environmental component to it as well.
Nice. So it sounds like you've definitely used this to quite the max as far as like yeah, I mean, I think those are great uses. I think is what I'm getting at. Goose says it also has to feel custom to be effective. If it's just that I unlock something in a set space, it's not as cool. Maybe possible with new variables. I would agree with that. If it's like, for example, if it's just achieving level 1, Well, if you play, eventually everyone's going to achieve level 1, right? Same with unlocking stuff. Maybe there's something unique you have to do to accomplish some unlocks. And so that plays into the exclusivity, emotion as well. So I was afraid I'd move through this too fast and be done in 30 minutes. But now we're less than 15 minutes to the top of the hour, and I've still got some more to go over. So I'm going to move on here. Goose says, I'm thinking of games like Animal Crossing or Sims. I'm sharing because I made something really creative with what's been given. Actually, I'm going to pause for just a moment. Before I ever got into VR, I was a hobbyist as a programmer, but I was active in the Twitch website on Twitch, and I was interested in using my ability to program to also create loyalty bots for the streamers. And so these were just bots that awarded fake currencies that people could use to play games in the chat, right? One of the things I've done is I just kind of gave people access to custom commands, but within those custom commands, I created the ability to implement variables and potentially fire other custom commands without giving it much thought. I just gave them some freedoms, right? Well, the community took that and ran with it, and it became the most favorite feature of the whole program. And that people were using those basic things that I did, those basic freedoms that I gave, and they were creating entirely new games out of it. So think about how you could potentially do the same in your Horizon worlds, how you can give players just enough freedom to let them be creative, right? So mastering the toolkit, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that Horizon gives us that can kind of help in this whole creating shareable moments and getting the content out, right? So for VR only, I was hesitant to include this. I'm going to share a link. I've been told not everyone has access to instant replays. A handful of people that I asked do, so I'm not entirely sure how widespread this is. But if you're logged in and you can see this address, you have access to the instant replay API. Unfortunately, it doesn't help us much with the competition this time around because the competition is mobile focused and instant replays are VR only. But if you're still developing for VR, it's still a worthwhile feature for especially producing shareable moments that players can share on those social medias. So it's a program that allows you to capture the shareable moments, but record strategically. Only share the success to players. Discard not so epic moments. You don't want to overuse this because players will start to ignore it. You want to deliver the recording to them at the best possible moment when they're most apt to share, right? Right after that emotional roller coaster. Goose says mobile players cannot take a photo anywhere, and I believe the video feature is an A/B rollout. I also heard mobile lost access to the photo booth. There's a lot of uncertainty from what I gather. Even in today's patch notes, it mentioned mobile camera 2.0. So mobile, and this was a question when they announced, Natasha says she got her video feature today. So when they announced that shareable moments was a key factor in this latest competition, but then I'm looking at my mobile device and I'm like, well, how do I really do that? I can take a screenshot, I can run a second app to do a recording, but I don't know that that's a good option. And it was like a week or two later, they announced this camera 2.0. So mobile is in the process of getting access to a camera, right? And that's kind of what I mentioned down here in our second bullet point is player camera and virtual photography. So the mobile player's camera, the player's camera itself, it can be controlled through camera APIs or through the spawn point gizmo. And so you can use these to put the players in a different perspective. You have a lot more detail when it comes to the camera API as to what you can do with their point of view. But even if you can't venture into the API for whatever reason, maybe you can still utilize the spawn point gizmo as a way to just change their perspective at a certain moment. Maybe go from that first person to that third person view so they can see what they accomplished, or they can see what they unlocked or attached to themselves. Also, It says both mobile and VR players have their own cameras. So we were just talking about that. Apparently it's slowly rolling out in VR. So you may or may not have a camera mobile. You may or may not have a camera on mobile. It's supposed to be a camera icon in the top right corner from what I understand. And then the last point here is stage photo opportunities with incredible views, room for large groups, and low resistance to getting the perfect picture. So in our worlds, when we create these moments of or triumph or accomplishment or discovery, think about where the player might take their picture. Maybe even have some signage or a frame or something that reminds them that, hey, you can take a picture, right? So be thinking about ways that you can incorporate this into your world, ways you can encourage picture taking. You might even throw up a toast potentially that warns the player ahead of time. This might be a scenic moment, or this might be something worth capturing. And maybe they start they start some kind of recording. I still understand that like recording on mobile may not be great. I don't know how well they can play the game. I've not played with the camera feature. Like I said, it's so new, I've not had a chance to access it yet. So I don't know if it's like, do they have to, is the camera following them? If you know, if you've played with it and you know in chat, let me know. King of Miami says it does have some limitations. Boss Leo says they have recording via casting to mobile. Okay. Goose says it's not available in focused interaction. Good to know. A little caveat for you. The last kind of tool that we have is the media board gizmo. So the closing mechanic for our virality engine is the media board gizmo. Gives players a place to contribute to the world without ever having to leave the Horizon ecosystem. It's a low resistance path to a quick moment of engagement and sharing. The board helps show other players what's possible in the world, what to expect, and can motivate them to capture their own moments and share as well. Personally, I have used the media board gizmo in popular worlds, and I've sat it right next to the camera gizmo, not the camera gizmo, the mirror gizmo. And boy, if you don't want to prove pictures on a daily basis, do not do this, because it will definitely encourage them to take pictures and share with your world. And then that's pictures they might potentially also share on those social media accounts. If at all possible, I like to kind of maybe put my world logo or world title in the backdrop of this mirror while they're taking their pictures. So when they do share them on social media, everyone who sees it knows exactly where to go to have all the fun they see their friends having in the pictures, right? Goose also says it's just a screen recording without the UI. I'm assuming you don't have to carry it since you don't have hands, so you could probably move freely. So you can maybe start a recording and then go through the last stage of a puzzle or the dark tunnel or something. So you might do something to encourage that before the moment occurs so they can potentially capture something. Immortal says, side note, we need to be able to approve pictures in desktop editor or portal. It's a very good point and quite an oversight now that we say it out loud, right? Kit Lane, you can add your logo right in the mirror itself, so every photo has it too. Can you elaborate? Or are you talking about like as a part of the backdrop? As an insertion into the mirror itself? So one last thing I want to touch on today is how to build that long-term momentum, how to keep it going, right? So we can incentivize by running regular campaigns to boost engagement and sharing to social media using your own hashtags, and maybe even offer a meaningful reward for participating. Maybe empower players by providing them with the perfect moment to share. They'll know what to do, and then amplify those by highlighting those who do share. So a special thank you or a monthly feature in a world can go a long way to uplift and celebrate your audience. Also ties into incentivation. In a previous world that I had, one of the things I did, and it was a little extra work from month to month, but I think it was totally worth it. Each month, my leaderboards reset. And so I would take the top person on the leaderboard for the month, and I'd put their profile picture in like a most wanted poster. And then each month, a new most wanted poster came out. And that would encourage people to take a picture with their poster and to share those online. But you could do something similar. Definitely utilize your social medias, your Discord communities for accumulating people who like you in your worlds, but also encourage sharing within those communities and reward it when you see it. And it might be currently a little manual work, but if you're working to build traffic and reach the critical mass we mentioned earlier within a world, it could definitely be a worthwhile venture for a period of time, right? Does anyone else have any other? I know there's a lot of really great creators in here, and I want to give everyone an opportunity to kind of give feedback or give insight on this particular topic, on how to keep the momentum going, how to encourage sharing within your communities, how to build your communities. If anyone has anything that they want to add, I'll definitely call that out. I think now's a good time. Best player of the month, Wall. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, that was a method that I used, and I found for myself that it worked well. Curious if anyone has anything similar that they've used or seen in a world that we can benefit from. Drew says, with world variables, my plan is to go heavy on factions. My brain's spinning.
Factions are like a rivalry, like baseball
Yeah.
teams, or like so now
Well,
when you're part of a community, if say you're part of the, crazy dogs or whatever, you're kind of in the gang, and then you're going to be more encouraged to participate with that gang and do things with it.
so you kind of got my mind going there when you mentioned that. With the new world variables, I'm coming up with all kinds of great ideas and great use cases for them. And in line with what you just said, along with like the Teams API that we were given access to, I could see potentially using like a world JSON variable in conjunction with Teams and being able to create factions and factions competing against each other. This could be also rolled into like clans and guilds possibly. I'd have to give it some more thought and think it through, but yeah, it's an interesting idea.
I mean, the other thing on that is factions could go cross worlds, really, if you think about it, and then you could really build out some pretty interesting dynamics if you have, you know, roams a bunch of gangs running around battling each other in different worlds.
So King of Miami does bring up a good point though. You don't think that it's scalable though for teams using the world PPV, and it's probably most definitely not. We would have to control the scaling in some way. So that's like maybe we create a handful of pre-established factions that players can just choose to join. Maybe they decay at a rapid rate if they're not like top performing factions potentially. There's ways around it, but I get your point, and I believe you are correct. So what's next? Remember, we're not just building games, but communities too. We can design to encourage and facilitate sharing and word of mouth marketing amongst our audience using the tools available and the psychology behind sharing. So one thing I want you guys to do now is to commit to implementing one new deliberately engineered shareable moment in your world based on the principles that we discussed today. And also in chat, what's one thing that you're taking away from today's session? I'm just curious for myself. What's one thing that stuck with you? And then after that, we'll be done. Don't forget the feedback link while you guys are answering there. Share, 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 says Daniel. That's definitely what today's theme is about. Getting that content out there, getting your audience to do the work for you too, right? Stormy Decker says, thinking a lot more about creating moments that would get players to take pictures, especially when available on mobile. I mean, I am too. After this research, I found it pretty insightful personally, and it's definitely going to be something I'm constantly thinking about as I'm developing going forward. How can I turn this into a moment of awe or excitement or triumph? You know, how can I induce that emotional roller coaster in players and get them to how can I make advancements? How can I celebrate advancements? Is another one I'm going to be thinking about a lot. Drew says build sharing into the overall structure more. Absolutely. Goose says again, would be nice if mobile players could take pictures. Pastu, is that how you pronounce it? Or Pastu? Feel free to come on mic if you want to correct me. I've wondered actually for a couple of weeks now. But they say sharing is the best tool available for us promoting our worlds at the moment. Yeah, I can't argue with that. Boss Leo, I would definitely consider it in my design process to guide how I design my game. Yeah, going to be a constant thought in my mind as well because it is, I think it is super important. And when done correctly, like I think it can make all the difference in your worlds.